Just take a seat. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 5 o'clock tonight. I'd like to call the June 14th, 2022 meeting of the Hayden City Council to order. Abby, could I please have a roll call of the members?
Council President Roeder,
Present.
Councilmember DePriest.
Here.
Councilmember White. Here. And Councilmember Satterfield is absent. We do have a quorum.
All right, excellent. I'd like to ask Councilmember Ed DePriest to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of council, do any of you have any call for notes or additions or corrections to the agenda tonight? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed. For those of you that may not be completely familiar with the next section here, we have a consent calendar. It's called consent because we have normal city business that often goes on, but still requires the consent of council before it can be finalized. On your calendar here, we'll just start off with these. For item on the consent calendar, number 1A, the approval of the May 10, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. 1B, the approval of May 24th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. C, the approval of Wake Media Professional Services Agreement for Media Services. 1D, the approval of the 4th and Honeysuckle Roundabout Change Order 3. 1E, the approval of the 4th and Honeysuckle Roundabout Change Order 4. F, the approval of the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board Wastewater Treatment Plant Facility Upgrades Payment Request. 1G, the approval of the Notice of Award for the 2022 Chip Seal Project. 1H, approval of the 2022 Spokane to Sandpoint Relay Event Permit Application. 1I, approval of the Code Text Amendment to Title 11, Chapter 2, Sections 4 and 8, Written Decision. 1J, approval of the Honeysuckle Concessions Agreement with Idaho Espresso for summer 2022. 1K, approval of Access Unlimited Monitoring Agreement for Alarm Monitoring Services. 1L, approval of Joint Funding Agreement to construct the Hayden North Sub-Regional Lift Station as amended. 1M, the ratification of the May payroll. 1N, ratification of the bills for payment from June 3rd, 2022. 1O, approval of the bills for payment. Do we have any discussion amongst council members?
I have,
Yes, sir. Councilmember DePriest.
couple, I guess. 1C, the Wake Media Services contract. This isn't going to be how often is this going to happen? Not every week or just when Michael is unable to be here, or how is that going to be?
The idea is to reduce his load and provide redundancy to have someone there. They would cover planning and zoning. So we were anticipating 2 to 3 hours each meeting there, and then when Michael is on vacation, we can't do it.
So Michael will be here for council meetings, but Wake Media will do planning.
Correct, that's the
Commission
plan.
meetings.
I mean, there might be a time where he's not here, he wants to be gone for vacation, then we'd have Wake Media come in.
At $50 an hour.
$50 an hour.
Okay. Item 1D, 4th and Honeysuckle Roundabout Change Order. Roughly $3,300 for standby. I guess I understand that they were there and couldn't do anything else, so that's an additional charge for them being on standby, or?
Well, it wasn't just standby. So there was an underground utility that was not where it was purported to be. So the plans showed it where it was purported to be, and that's not where it was. And so then there was a conflict in trying to get the other utilities to work with that current location. And so then there was some time trying to resolve that. There was time on the contractor's part digging and researching for the engineer in order to determine what conflicts there were in order to make a determination on how to fix the issue.
Okay. And along with it, I guess, the change order number 4, let's see, was necessary, I guess, an overage of pipe. And am I correct? The change order decreases the overall contract by $11,500. So that's a good to the city. Am I?
It's actually a good, it's a good to the contract, and it's a good to Harbs, because that affects their portion of the joint agreement for this project.
So it has really no effect on the city?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Bear with me here a minute. Are we also into the bills for payment? It looks like here, make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. The bond refund.
If I could interrupt you for just a moment.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions on items on the consent calendar other than bills for payment?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Alan, this is a question for Alan, if you would, please. It's regarding the notice of award to Road Products LLC for the 2022 chip seal project. And in the last, second to the last paragraph, I'm just a little confused. Maybe you can bring some clarity to it. It says, our portion consists of the base bid of $335,144.40 and the alternative bid total of $46,051.20. Can you just explain what that alternative is? It seems like you'd have a high number, maybe a higher number, but
Well, it would be an additive. That would be an additive alternative to the base bid.
which have we chose that alternative?
Yes, so when we did the bid, in order to maximize the work we can do, we estimate what work we think we can fund with our budget, but since we don't know what the bid's going to come out at, especially in this bidding market,
Right.
I was concerned that the cost could be so high that we would end up with a bid we couldn't award because it would be too high. And so we actually went with something a little more conservative. We put an additive alternate bid in there so that if the bids came in good, we would be able to get more work done with the budget we have. So that's still underneath the budget that we can award per our budget for this year with the additive alternate. So that means our part of the contract would be the base bid for the city plus that additional.
So the total will be paying those, we add those two numbers together, and that's what we're going to pay.
Yes.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, President Roeder. Okay, on to the bills for payment.
Okay. Okay.
Councilmember DePriest,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm guessing this would possibly answer, I have several of these questions regarding the bond refunds on page, what page is this? One of one, I guess, on, to Kenneth Doris, $44,000. What is that? What are these bonds? Because there's that, and then there's another bond refund of like 30,000. What are these bonds? What are these?
So
EWD.
Okay. So, we have several bonds. That's why I was kind of asking her which one it was. So like a BEN in our system is a bond for engineering pass-through fees. A BPN bond is a bond for public noticing, and that's a deposit that we collect and then we return. A BWD is a bond that is for either performance surety for work that needs to be completed before it's finally accepted by the city. Those have to do with right-of-way utility permits. They also have to do with subdivision construction or site plan construction. So based on the name that you gave rattled off, that sounds like
BWD 21, is that a performance type bond?
Sounds like a performance
And that's why
bond.
these amounts are,
right. And so we've been
Yeah.
doing lots of bond returns, both for temporary certificates of occupancy that had performance bonds related to houses that finished during the wintertime that are just finishing their landscaping requirements now. And so they're getting bonds back, and you're going to see bonds that are returned for performance and for warranty as their projects complete the subdivision construction process.
And a BTC bond is what?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Who's it?
Chubb's, 118 East Hayden Avenue.
That's temporary. That's a temporary
$30,000.
occupancy for
Okay.
an
That's what I thought, yeah.
apartments that are behind.
Okay.
So once they fulfill those conditions, then it gets released back
They
to
perform, they get their money back. Right. Okay, and on another one here on page 8 of 33, Hamilton Manufacturing Kiosk Upgrade, $3,400, boat launch operation maintenance.
So our kiosks that we collect for boat launch down at Honeysuckle Beach
Right.
is kind of archaic, and it,
Does not accept chipped cards,
Oh,
and it does not accept Apple Pay or any of the ways that you can pay with your phone.
and so we're getting fees because it's not meeting certain security criteria.
Yes.
And so to upgrade that so that we can meet the appropriate security criteria and get rid of these fees that we're getting hit with,
right.
we've upgraded that system
Okay.
using funds from the boat launch.
There will also
So-
be a contract coming forward, I hope, in the next council meeting for a new provider too. We have to upgrade our provider as well.
Okay, and one more here. I keep seeing Honeysuckle Beach launch, beach study, and this is on page 21. Welch Comer, $37,184. It just seems like every month, and I could be mistaken, but it just seems like there's constant Honeysuckle Beach study in these large amounts. Was this a broken down, 3 or 4 payments, or?
The only amount there that's for the Honeysuckle Beach is $1,800. The rest of those are for other projects. Honeysuckle 4th Roundabout Design, Hayden Atlas Intersection Design, Hayden Ramsey Intersection Design.
So the one I'm looking at basically the top on page 21, says Welch Comer, Honeysuckle 4th and Honeysuckle Roundabout, Honeysuckle 4th Roundabout Design, $33,940.
So those are, there, we have ongoing contract, there's a master contract with them for X number of dollars to manage the construction, engineering
This is a
construction.
payment of that master
That's a
contract.
payment on percentage of performance completed.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
And that's the same for basically all those.
Right.
Have any other questions about bills for payment?
All of my questions have been answered. Thank
Okay.
you.
I have a quick question for you. On that same page 21, we've got 3 payments for the Honeysuckle Beach study, and I had been under the impression that that had been paid for already. Is that not the case?
I think this is the final payment on it, and the reason that there are 3 is because it's split over 3 funds to
Oh,
pay
okay.
for it.
Great. Any other questions, members of council? Okay, great. We will move on to our visitor and public comment section.
Mayor, would you like to take action on the consent calendar?
Oh, yeah, I would like to. Thank you very much for asking that. Do we have a motion to accept the items that are on the consent
I'll
calendar?
make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion from members of council? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember DePreez.
Yes.
And Council President Roder.
Yes.
Now we will move on to the public comment phase. It has been brought to our attention here in the last week that it is, in this day and time, it is inadvisable for people who are speaking in the public comment section to have to give their addresses because this is broadcast live on the internet right now. So we will no longer ask for your address. We have it on your public comment card. We will simply ask that you provide your name and tell us whether or not you are a resident of the city of Hayden. Our first commenter is Mr. Bob Reich.
Oh, thank you. It's Bob Reish.
Reish, I'm sorry, Mr. Reish. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts tonight.
And Mr. Reish, are you a member, are you a resident of the city of Hayden?
No, I'm a resident of the county of Cooney County.
Okay, thank you very much.
My address is Hayden.
Go ahead.
All right. I've emailed the mayor, the members of the city council, the city administrator, and the city clerk with comments and recommendations regarding the Honeysuckle Beach study final report. Additionally, on 11 May, my wife and I had the opportunity to talk to Councilmember White personally at the Feller Ditch Dalton Irrigation Canal area, which is the proposed site relocation for the boat launch, should that, and parking facilities presented in the study, should that option be chosen. During the 10 May City Council meeting, when the final report was presented by Ms. Cleveland, in response to a question from Councilmember White, Ms. Cleveland responded that the only encumbrances to the proposed parking area were trees and bushes. Unfortunately, that response is not completely accurate. The proposed parking lot, per the study, should the option of relocating the boat launch be chosen, will be over the Feller Ditch, which was constructed in 1913, which is now the Dalton Irrigation Canal. I'd like to inform the mayor and the city council that I've contacted the Kootenai County Historic Preservation Commission regarding the process of adding the 1913 Feller Ditch to the historic record. I'd also like to comment on remarks made at the 24 May City Council meeting during the roundtable discussion. Council President Roeder commented about the lack of financial plan associated with the comprehensive plan, and I believe he has a very valid point. I'd like to point out that the Honeysuckle Beach study final report also does not have a financial plan or costs associated with it. In fact, in my opinion, for what it's worth, the money spent on the plan could have been used to upgrade the facilities that already exist. For these reasons, I respectfully request and strongly recommend that one of the members move that action on the Honeysuckle Beach study final report accepted at the 10 May 2022 City Council meeting be postponed indefinitely. Also during the roundtable, Councilmember DePriest offered that while he welcomed comments from everyone, there should be a process determining who among the speakers were registered to vote in Hayden and who was not. For the record, I live in the county, not in the city of Hayden, so I'm not eligible to vote for any of you sitting at the dais today. I do, however, live in the area of city impact. It's on the chart back at the rear of the room. And so your decisions do impact my quality of life. Yet I have no voice in who makes those decisions. I would hope that under these circumstances, the mayor and the council members remember your actions and decisions carry beyond just those who are eligible to vote for you in the city of Hayden. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. We appreciate it. Next speaker, Ms. Teresa Roth.
I'm Teresa Roth. I live about a quarter mile outside of Hayden city limits. I have 5 grandchildren who live in Hayden. I have a daughter who lives and son-in-law who live in Hayden, who's a Hayden lifetime resident. And I shop in Hayden, eat in Hayden, and work out in Hayden, and other things in Hayden too. And I own property in Hayden. So yes, I consider myself a Hayden resident, even if technically I reside a quarter mile outside the limit. Okay, I want my full 5 minutes, please. Okay, I have written a letter to the councilmen members, which I hope you have. I'm just going to review very quickly what's in that letter. And I have a copy for anybody who's interested. I really love the city and I love you guys, but I got involved about a year ago because I was very concerned about the 2040 comp plan. And we've been doing little tiny things around the edges of it, but there's huge glaring problems with it that are not being faced, they're not being discussed. A year ago, it was requested to have a town hall about the 2040 plan, that the residents could express their concerns to the Hayden people, employees who made the plan. I've sat through hours of having things explained to me from the city administrators, but I think the city administrators need to listen to what the residents have to say. I'm going to bring up 4 issues very briefly. One of the huge problems is the anticipated future density. We're supposed to grow, all of our plans are supposed to fit 34,000 people in the next 20 years, but the sewer right here has an ultimate build out of 75,000 people in Hayden. That is what the sewer plan is putting in 6-foot pipes for to fit 75,000 people in Hayden. I think that is an insane number. I think the 35,000 number is insane. And if you trace back where that number came from, somebody made that up. I've traced it back, but that's a different story. Another huge problem is mixed use. And the problem with mixed use, I'll get right to the point. Donna last week explained that the reason we changed from multifamily to mixed use is because, quote, multifamily allowed residential multifamily, but not enough multifamily units were being built, because when people actually had the choice, they chose single family. People want single family. So the solution, because there wasn't enough multifamily according to the planners, was to create a zone that is exclusively can only have multifamily on it and make it 1,000 acres. Almost all new development is dedicated in a zoning that can only be multifamily. The minimum thing you can build is a fourplex. You can't build even a duplex in there. You can't build townhouses. You can't plate lots in mixed use for single ownership. But you can have 15 people per acre, but not a single one of those 15 people are going to be able to own anything. That is wrong. It's unacceptable, and it has to be discussed. And I really appreciate that we've limited the amount of mixed use that can go on. That's a great first step. It gives us time, but we have to face up to this. Another issue is the manufactured home. 10% of our homes are manufactured homes, almost all in manufactured home parks. And then latest revision, what do you call it? It's all non-conforming. If you live in a manufactured home park, it can't be expanded, it can't be improved, it can't be changed. It's in an area that is no longer supported. That's 10% of Hayden residents live in. We're talking all about problems with non-conforming in the multifamily. What about the 600 manufactured homes, almost all which are now in non-conforming areas, which can't be proved, which can't be sold, which will, and what happens then is they are allowed to degrade and ultimately get wiped out. So that, and it takes 20 years, but in 20 years, all those manufactured home parks that are non-conforming will be destroyed. The last point I wasn't in the thing because I just learned it last night. I already knew it, but it was confirmed when I attended the Urban Renewal District, and both Matt and Ed were there, so they can back up what I'm saying. They've been trying desperately to do traffic studies on Hayden, on government, to make these horrendous traffic problems anything to solve them. Signal changes, roundabouts, they are unsolvable. And Alan pointed out exactly why they're unsolvable, because Hayden was not designed to be, I need to finish. Hayden was not designed to support the kind of population densities. There would need to be many more roads. The only two ways you can get across Hayden are Maple and Government. All north-south traffic west of of 95 has to go up government. It can't be fixed. I've
Ms.
lived
Roth,
in
Ms. Roth,
cities.
I'm sorry, I need to cut you off.
But the traffic problems are unsolvable and are a disaster and cannot support even the population we have. And
Thanks, Ms.
the
Roth.
comp plan has got to be revised.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Do we have any other, no other comments? Okay. We move on now to items of unfinished business. The first for our action item is for Titles 5, 6, and 7, the Code Amendment Ordinance. Who is the lucky individual that gets to explain those to us?
I'll bring it up. So we did talk about this in a previous meeting, and so this is just to do the ordinance part of this, but this is the disorderly conduct, adding disorderly conduct language has, in addition to some parking regulations and residential, mainly to keep out like larger trucks that might start up in the early mornings and might wake up other people. Anyways, there's a weight limit. It has all that in there. And also the council requested to increase the parking fee violations. And so that's in here as well. So those are the highlights of the changes for 5, 6, and 7. So we have discussed them before, and this is to move forward with the ordinance.
Okay, excellent. Council discussion. Councilmember White.
Yes, I had a question about the officer needing to contact shelters in order to help people find shelter who are disorderly conduct. I was just wondering, the term available overnight shelter is a public or private shelter. So is the burden on the officer to find a shelter? And if he finds a shelter, is he supposed to transport the person to a shelter?
That is a very good question.
Yeah, we went back and forth on this, and it comes from the case from down south, but Abby has some detail on that.
When we were formulating these code changes, we did meet with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, and they did indicate that that is something that they are aware that they will need to do, and that they are willing to do. As far as transporting them, I don't know any requirements, not in our code anyways, but I don't know if there's any additional requirements for that. They just can't cite them if there's not an available shelter. But if there is, they can cite them.
There's not a requirement to do that I'm aware of. So.
Deputy, can you provide any information for us about when you, I know this is not what you signed up for tonight, I understand that, but procedures that you take?
So this is a pretty important code to add as the city is growing. I don't know if you need me to come over to a mic.
Yeah, come
sure,
over to the mic.
We'd certainly appreciate it.
I'm Deputy Cox with the Sheriff's Office. So this is a pretty important code. The city's growing rapidly at this pace, and this is a code that should have been put in a while ago. We stole this straight from Boise PD, if I remember right. Basically, what it allows us to do is if we have someone that is continually causing problems in the city of Hayden, where we don't have enough to get them on trespassing, but they're constantly haggling people or going from property to property to property to property, this will give us a solution to be able to solve that problem for the night, whether it's taking them to a shelter or if they're refusing and starting to be more of a issue or amping up their demeanor, then it's something that we could even arrest or cite them on. So just instead of us not being able to deal with these people that are doing this or be able to identify them, for instance. So if someone's in a public area, I don't have the right just to get their name and identification, but if they're causing problems, this disorderly code is kind of the catch-all that allows us to, if they are causing problems at different public areas or private areas, now I have the means based off this code to identify them, see if they have any warrants, see if I can get them home. It just gives us a little bit more tools that we need. Boise PD uses this code quite a bit. And it just helps solve the problem, whether it's through giving them a ride or eventually taking them to jail if they're not going to be compliant.
Okay. Question? Yes, sir. Councilmember Priest.
Deputy Cox, currently, you come upon this situation, what do you do? Do we have a shelter here? Are there shelters you can? And if there's not a shelter, what do you do?
So currently, I can't make them do anything. If they are just verbally being a problem and they're not trespassing and refusing to leave, they can just keep bouncing around all day, which takes times and services from us as the sheriff's office, constantly following this person around the different areas when we could be doing more proactive things like running traffic and that kind of stuff. So currently, there's not a lot we can do with that unless they're committing a different crime, which is why this new city ordinance would give us the ability to kind of fill that hole that we don't have right now. But if, for instance, this code is adopted, what we'll do is, especially in the wintertime, we'll check with the shelters in Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, see if we can't give that individual a ride there to, one, get them out of the city, because then it won't be a problem in the city anymore, but two, to get that person the help that they need, rather than just taking them to jail or allowing them to continue to stumble around or peruse the city of Hayden.
And if the shelters say we're full, then what would you do with them?
So if the shelters are full, then we can start to reach out to Spokane Valley, Spokane.
Keep moving out till you find
Yeah,
one?
there's lots of different options that we can do. We also have the Crisis Center in Coeur d'Alene, which is an option that we use frequently. But again, we can't make people go to those things. This code would just give us the added ability and legal authority to kind of solve some more problems and kind of make people leave the city if they're up to no good and not doing anything beneficial.
We have other questions of Deputy Cox?
I'd like one, to
Certainly.
ask one, please.
Council President Rowe.
Yes, Deputy, I'd like to know if someone violates 5-4-1, with what's prohibited as conduct, do you make an arrest or do you not? I mean, does this tool give you the ability not to arrest someone, but to deal and move them from the premises? Or does this violation of this give you the ability to cite them, say with a misdemeanor?
So it all comes down to officer discretion and how serious the problem is. I mean, there's a lot of Idaho codes that people violate on a daily basis. Doesn't mean I necessarily arrest someone or cite them every single time. We can do verbal warnings and just escort them out of the area, so to say. So this code, like I said, gives us the ability if we have to, if it's someone that is a no person that I don't have a crime on necessarily, but they're still causing a disturbance. Now, potentially, yes, I could take them to jail on this code, or I could cite them, or I could just give them a verbal warning, which might be like, hey, you are violating this ordinance, you need to move along, or I'm gonna have to take you to jail. And that usually works with people too. So it's not a catch-all saying that we must or we shall arrest them. It's just a tool that we can now use at any one of those levels. It's a misdemeanor, so we could arrest or cite or give a verbal warning.
But in violation of this code, it would be a misdemeanor?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Deputy Cox, and thank you very much for your service. We appreciate you keeping us safe. Do we have any other comments regarding this action item? Do I hear a motion from any,
Two motions?
I'm sorry, is it two motions?
Yeah, go ahead and grab your book.
It'd be
And
3B.
go to that ordinance page. First motion to suspend the rule. That one.
So is this my motion
So
here?
you're gonna call for a motion to read the
Okay.
ordinance?
All right. I make a motion to read the,
You can't make a motion, but you can call for a motion.
may I have a motion to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading?
So motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. May I have a roll call, please?
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And then you read it by title only, which is going to be this section. So you're gonna
Okay.
read by title only, and then we'll call for a motion.
Okay. This ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Hayden, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Hayden City Code to add Title V, Chapter 4, disorderly conduct, amending Title 6, Chapter 1, Section 3, parking regulations, amending Title 7, Chapter 5, Section 3, definitions, providing severability, providing for repeal of the conflicting provisions, and providing an effective date. I call for a motion that the ordinance be adopted on its having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve titles 5, 6, and 7 code amendment ordinance.
Second.
Second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. On to item 3B. Same with this one for the zone code text.
And
Okay.
can explain or present if you'd like her to.
All right. Do we have someone here who's going to be presenting to us on our next item, the
So-
zone code text amendment for Chapter 11, pardon me, Title 11, Chapter 2?
This is the ordinance that basically puts into effect the changes to the mixed-use code section that the written decision was approved previously tonight. So this is the ordinance that puts that decision into effect.
All right. Do we have any comments or questions from any member of council? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Second? Thank you.
Roll call.
May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember White?
No.
This is a motion to
to-
suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules, yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Motion passed. So for an ordinance of the City of Hayden, a political subdivision of the state of Idaho, amending Hayden City Code Title 11, Chapter 2, zoning districts, providing severability, providing for the publication of this ordinance by summary, and providing an effective date. May I hear a motion that the ordinance be adopted on its having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage?
So motion.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
Please refresh my memory on what we're voting on right now.
This is to adopt the ordinance having passed its first reading by title only and to be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage. So adopting the ordinance.
Okay. I'm going to vote no on the ordinance.
Council President Roder
Yes.
and Councilmember DePriest.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed. For new business, we have an action item. We have the pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers code amendment ordinance.
Abby has been working on this one with the county sheriff, and so turn to her for that one.
Can you provide us some information on that,
Yes,
please?
Mayor and Council, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, their Detectives Division reached out to us recently and asked us to make the proposed amendments to our code to allow for the reporting of, by the pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers businesses electronically, as now is allowed in common practice.
Discussion amongst council members?
I have a couple of questions.
Certainly.
I was wondering about if there's I didn't see in here a clear definition of what pawnbroker secondhand dealer or recycler was?
That is because that part was not being amended by these proposed amendments. So it wasn't included. If you would like, I can grab the book and read it.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, the definition for a pawnbroker is any person, partnership, association, corporation, or agent thereof, which in the course of its business loans money and receives a security of personal property as a pledge, or holds such personal property under a conditional sales contract or an agreement to resell such personal property to the borrower or his assignee at a price agreed upon at or before the time of such transaction, except this term shall not apply to banks, trust companies, or bond brokers who are otherwise regulated by law and authorized to deal in commercial paper, sales of stocks, bonds, and other certificates of value. A secondhand dealer is any person, partnership, association, corporation, or agent thereof engaging in, conducting, managing, or carrying out the business of buying, selling, or otherwise dealing in used or secondhand personal property, rebuilt or reconditioned goods, wares, or merchandise, providing that this term shall not apply to a person conducting a casual or isolated sale of one's own personal property, provided further that this term shall not apply to a retail dealer of used or secondhand merchandise whose stock of merchandise consists of 90% of objects of art, curios, or household furniture, or furnishings offered for sale on the basis, express or implied, that the value of the property in whole of substantial part is derived from its age and historical association. Provided further that this term shall not apply to shops dealing exclusively in coins, currency, and other precious metals, auto wreckers, used car dealers, or dealers of new articles who would allow their patrons an exchange value on used or secondhand articles of personal property.
Okay. And recycler, was that in there?
No, recycler was one to be added. And that was consistent with the county's code. But I do not see a definition added in here.
Is that something that should be done, to put a definition of recycler in there?
Do we need a definition of recycler in our code?
If we didn't add a definition and a council member's asking for it, then we probably should.
Okay. Do you have a definition that you want us to add, or do you want me just to grab what the county has? Or use what the county has?
That would be fine.
Or we can strike that altogether since we don't have a recycler in.
Yeah, I was wondering, do we
Hayden,
have a recycler here? No, we don't.
But if that's something that you would like to have added, then we can add a definition for that as well.
Do you have any idea if the county has a definition of recycling in the county
I
code?
imagine that they do. I took this directly from the code that they provided me, so
Okay.
I would imagine.
Council members, are other thoughts on this?
Just table it and do a revision.
I'd like to ask Abby this, if you will, please. So currently, there is paperwork, non-electronic, that goes between the pawnbroker and the sheriff's office to report. So all what this is doing is simplifying it so it's done via the internet.
Right, through a software program that the sheriff's office approves.
So it's probably more accurate, more up-to-date, and gives quicker information to the sheriff's office. That's what this does.
That sounds like that was the intent from the sheriff's office. That's what I
Okay.
got from them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had further questions.
Councilmember White, go ahead.
So, I was wondering about the recyclables. So, if someone's dealing in recyclables, would they have to hold on to the recycled objects for the time determined here? Because I know with recyclables, you want to do it quickly.
I believe the intent of the recycler, and I'd have to go back and reread the code, was metals or things that were of value rather than, like the solid waste.
Okay.
Cuba County solid waste, they collect and recycle. That, I don't believe that was the intent of, or the definition of a recycler.
Okay, so we would need a definition of recycler before we could really approve of this. Do we have these businesses in Hayden? Do we have pawnbrokers and?
We do have two businesses that we issue a pawnbroker's license to, or secondhand dealer's license to.
Okay. So the secondhand dealer does not apply to garage sales or thrift stores?
I can read you the county's definition of secondhand dealer. Is it the same as ours?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's close.
So I was
You
just
already read it.
confirming that it didn't apply to garage sales or thrift stores.
No, and I'm looking at the county code, and the county code does not have a definition of recycler.
Okay.
But it includes it.
It does. It does. And I can tell you that this request by the county is because there is a new national pond database that is being utilized with updated software and ways by which to track pond items and or search for stolen property. This is purely just a product of that updated system to utilize for stolen property.
So it's to reduce theft.
Well, it's because the county doesn't have a jurisdiction or authority to impose these restrictions within our city limits. So the county adopted their own code to be compliant with the systems that they need to use in the detectives division, and then requested every municipal jurisdiction to also adopt the same code so that they could be uniform across the county.
All right.
Other questions?
Let's see. And about the age limit, like 18-year-olds. So I guess it comes down to the recycler and what that means, because I know that sometimes teenagers or kids will collect cans or try to recycle. So does that affect recycling and minors?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
If it would, so council can adopt the ordinance as is, or direct staff to make changes, and we can make those changes and bring it back at the next council meeting for your consideration.
Okay.
Do we have other discussion?
Yeah, I guess. I interpret this and take it as to be speaking to people who are, for lack of a better term, in the commercial business of doing this. Kids collecting cans and getting their 5 cents or whatever they're worth now. I don't think it is dealing with that. It sounds like law enforcement is trying to bring us current with the national methods of trying to deal with stolen property and try and, prevent it from being pawned and make it more difficult for thieves to engage in their activities. And I think that from what I've heard and what I see, that and the sheriff's department endorsing it and asking for it, again, the electronic aspect of it will probably speed up the process and make it much more efficient to hopefully catch these people sooner than it probably does now, where, the paperwork could have a huge lag, where I think electronic might be, if it's reported every day, say, hey, we've got this, and within a few hours, somebody's going to say that's stolen, and they could get on that process of finding the person who did that. So I think this is a very positive and good thing that we're doing here.
Other comments or questions, council members?
Yes. Yes. I would
ahead.
like to see a definition of recycler in here, because that could be misinterpreted to be someone who recycles tin cans and glass bottles. rather than something more precious.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we would approve the pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers code amendments that would also include a definition of recyclers.
Second.
First and second. Is there any further discussion?
Would we be able to see the definition or hear the definition of recycler before it's added? I mean, before it's,
Well, the motion before is to include a definition.
okay. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Council members, but just as a caution here, are you all going to be satisfied with whatever definition the city clerk comes up with? Or would you prefer to have the definition in front of you and next council meeting, we could pass this? I'm just throwing that out as an option. I understand the motion right now is to approve this with a definition of recycler.
Would it help, Mayor, if I included the definition of a commercial recycler? Would that help?
Councilmember White?
I would like to see a definition of recycler or commercial recycler before I approve it.
Can I ask? The county apparently does not even have a definition.
No,
Is there a definition out there?
I was just looking, there's several.
Do you have one that you could recommend that you see offhand?
I was just looking for one. I liked where Council President Roeder was going with the idea of a commercial recycler. I'll read you the most common definition. A person or company that collects and sorts trash and treats it in order to produce useful materials that can be used again. So again, going back to the county's stated purpose for this particular code section, it says the purpose of this chapter is regulatory. It is intended to assist law enforcement agencies in tracing stolen property. It is also intended to prevent disposal of stolen property through pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers. So the purpose is to prevent the transfer of stolen property through the pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers, which could also include a recycler. So I could find a definition of commercial recycler that would fit.
I'm happy with what I heard there, to be honest with you. I think.
Well, that's in the county code.
Yeah. It sounds like the recycler that I, would think of when someone says, hey, we're in the recycling business.
So would that, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So would that include the recyclers who just do aluminum cans and glass bottles?
You asking me?
Well, I'm trying to
Fonda.
give some,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were asking.
So does
me.
that definition include the regular kind of recycler who just does tin cans and glass bottles as well? Or is it only precious metals?
It didn't say precious metals.
Okay.
I mean, I think we would have to try to find a definition that is suitable.
Okay.
Or you could remove recycler altogether.
Just take
You don't have to
recycler
leave it
out.
in there.
We don't have it.
You don't have one in the city anyways.
Can I ask the deputy a question? Glad you came tonight? For as best as you can, in your awareness of the intent of the sheriff, I guess, or the county in this case, bringing this to us, is there much activity related to stolen properties, or the intent of this to people who recycle new, I don't know, paper, glass bottles, tin cans, things like that?
So I think that you guys are slightly just overlooking it. The main purpose of this, with it being recycler, is the companies that are recycling. If you are a person or recycling, you are not technically considered a recycler under this. It's for the companies that are taking your cans and bottles and whatnot and then melting that stuff down. For instance, in Coeur d'Alene, it's like Hearn Iron Works. The problem with this and why the county's adding this and why nationwide they're adding recycler is because of catalytic converters, copper pipes, copper wires, a lot of stuff that is really on the rise of getting stolen. This code allows us, if a recycler were to ever be in Hayden or is in Hayden, gets a catalytic converter, they can't just dismantle it and melt it down the first day. They'd have to report that keep it for the allotted time that the code reads, and it just helps us get that back, because catalytic converters are thousands of dollars. So that's why the county is switching to this ordinance. It won't affect the way it's written, at least, and I'm not a legal attorney, but it's meant for the actual people that all your cans go to. Once you put them in the can and it goes to the recycler, that's who this definition is. And it's just to help us track those items before they do get melted down and sold and turned into other things, because that's where the value of a lot of stolen items are right now.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd also like to add that even though we don't have a recycler now, we don't know in the future here what's going to happen. Plus, it was on the news, I think this last week, that Spokane has a huge rise in theft of catalytic converters. And it's like thousands of % increase. So it is on the rise. So I support this. I would just like to keep my motion that we just add commercial recyclers in my motion and move forward on it.
Council President Roder,
Any other discussion?
may I ask, so in the first definition I read, we simply could add a commercial recycler is a company that collects and sorts trash and treats it in order to produce useful materials that can be used again. That's like the most common definition, and we could add commercial.
I'm good with that. How about Councilmember White?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, so my motion then would include this definition.
Correct.
And the rest of my motion stands, Mayor.
Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Now, in order to pass the motion, so that's approving it, and then you have to do is to adopt it.
Oh, yeah.
For this
Oh,
ordinance.
yeah.
Okay.
I forgot a step.
Council members, may I have a motion, please, to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Second. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Council President Roder?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePriest?
Yes. May I now have a motion?
Oh, you gotta read.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
The
that's okay.
title of the ordinance, council members, is an ordinance of the City of Hayden, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Hayden City Code Title 3, Chapter 4, pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers, providing severability, providing for repeal of conflicting provisions, and providing an effective date. May I please hear a motion that the ordinance be adopted on its having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage?
So I'll make that motion, and also just to include that we would include the definition of commercial recycler as stated by our legal counsel.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion?
You want me to read that into
You
record?
could,
No,
or
just hand
pass it to
Just
Abby.
pass it to Abby. I just wrote it down for you.
Thank you.
You're making it too easy.
Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Okay, the book did its job again. All right, moving on to reports. Mr. Boyer.
Yeah, good evening. The Public Safety Task Force did meet again. They've been making progress. In the last meeting, we had a report from the county on cost of officers and just kind of looking at the spectrum of what they could stay at or could be added. And so they've asked information about how that would tie in with taxes, et cetera. So they keep asking, additional questions. The next meeting we're planning on having is July 6th. And we're going to provide some more information. We're meeting with the sheriff to kind of sit down and go through some of that information and give them some tax information and some things like that. So they're making progress. They're having good discussions. There's not a consensus yet on what to do. They're still kind of just looking at things. But I think there's been some good discussion. So Ed's been in there, and I think, and Roger. I don't know if there's anything, Ed, you want to add, but I think there's some thoughtful folks on there on what they want to see as far as public safety in the city. Next week is the Association of Idaho City Conference, and so I know multiple members will be down there, and we've talked about that a little bit. Also, in the last meeting, we had a task to put together information. A letter was put together by Community Development and has been reviewed, seen by Mayor and Council, and we've been working on that. I know Councilmember White had some thoughts and concerns, and Mayor and I and Sandra and Donna met and went through some of those, and some questions came up, and we asked our city attorney to research those, and she has some discussion and answers on those that I'd like her to present during this discussion.
So two of the questions that I was asked to be prepared to answer tonight. One was whether or not the interim ordinance that is in place with regard to residential multifamily could be extended beyond 1 year. And the answer to that is no. So Idaho Code 67-6524 specifically states that an interim ordinance must state a definite term not to exceed 1 year. And that code section is designed to give cities an opportunity to put interim ordinances in place when you're in contemplation of an amendment to your comprehensive plan, so that you can kind of be working those simultaneously and not be hamstrung by needing this succession in the process. So it's really strict on the 1 year time frame. So the residential multifamily interim ordinance does and will expire at the end of the 1 year, which is September something, I can't remember. So 22nd or 28th. The other question that I was asked about was whether or not we could put a note basically in our current mixed residential code that would state any already approved residential single-family subdivisions, in essence, would not have the same setbacks and standards as the mixed residential, but they would stay in the single-family requirements. And the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. So Idaho Code 67-6511 subsection 1A says that when you create your zoning codes and your different zones, that all standards shall be uniform for each class or kind of building. So if you want to have different standards, you have different zones, but anything within a zone shall be uniform across the zone. So the other issue that we kind of bumped up against with regards to a timing piece is if you did stumble upon a change to your current zoning code that you might be satisfied with, it does require a public hearing at Planning and Zoning and Council before that information, of course, could be utilized for making determinations on what's going to happen with the current residential multifamily parcels that need to be rezoned. So those are the two questions I was asked to provide answers to. Yes.
Can I ask you, when the interim ordinance expires, it reverts back to, if no action is taken, if nothing is changed, am I correct that it reverts back to what is on the future land use map, or what does it revert to when it expires?
When it expires, you just have parcels that are currently zoned residential multifamily that need a zone, that you are required to provide them a zone.
They have no design
They have no
standards, they have no use allowances, they have no nothing.
So we better do
There's no
something one way or the
reversion to
another
anywhere.
with regards to residential multifamily or mixed use, because, or not mixed use, mixed residential.
Residential,
Those two are the question,
Right.
one or the other.
We need, those parcels need to be headed in a direction to some zone somewhere before the expiration of the interim ordinance.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Do you have another question?
Well,
on
yeah,
that?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this and trying to deal with a complex problem that seems like the answers are more complex sometimes than.
Sometimes.
And so this isn't easy for staff or us. I'll speak for myself. But we have some proposed letters here concerning conversion from residential multifamily to R1, or to mixed residential, or residential suburban, or to commercial, or to mixed use. My question is, do we have any numbers that you could provide me that I could kind of help get my head wrapped around this? Do you have that?
I probably have them in your email.
Because
So, I sent an email to, I don't know, Brett or somebody. Anyway, and I rattled off numbers yesterday, so let's see if I can do this again from memory.
I have the numbers.
Do you have the numbers? Okay, go for it.
The numbers that Donna gave me on this are that of the, and I don't have the total number
And
of
it's
properties.
important to note, it's really important to note that we haven't had a town hall, we haven't had the opportunity to meet with the folks that are in the residential multifamily zone, and that this is staff's best determination, or best guess, at what the existing uses are, and to try not to create any spot zones. So it's important to put some couching on this conversation before you rattle off numbers, because this may or may not be what we actually bring forward if we're migrate this toward public hearing. Those numbers may change slightly. It's important to note that.
Right, what I want to correlate though are what the numbers are and where they are on a map.
Right.
Because I think that to me is how I can better understand how we can approach this. So what are the numbers, if you will?
Do you want me to do it? Because she's got them.
I have them right here.
I can kind of couch them, if that's all right. Is that all right? All right, so we were tasked by the city council to look at existing conditions, okay? So
what's on the ground right now?
What's on the ground right now as they exist today, and try not to have new spots on both of those. So we were looking at 9 lots that could potentially go to commercial. Most of those lots are split zoned lots today, so they're commercial and residential multifamily. And so it made sense to make them all one zone because it's easier to develop something in one zone. Residential suburban, we had 1 of those. Single family residential, we had 179. R1, single family residential, R1. Mixed residential, and I kind of put in parentheses, single family, because again, remember, mixed residential is all about single family ownership. That's 346 lots. 219 of those are in platted single family subdivisions today. 54 of those lots have duplexes. 67 of those lots are in planned unit developments where the planned unit development design standards would really trump how that gets developed, but that's the most closely resembling zone to what they were approved. And then there are 6 others that would be migrating toward mixed residential. And again, that's all about not trying to get that spot zoning to exist. So that's in there. And then mixed use, there were 14. 6 of those lots are in a planned unit development. And 8 of those lots are where there is multifamily / commercial already existing.
So, but let me ask my question again. This is where staff is saying you're in residential multifamily, which now it's going to expire in September. So staff is saying these numbers that you presented here tonight is where staff thinks we ought to move those into. My concern is we have a town hall meeting, is we're not going to give people an option on this. Is that true?
I think that
they have to do something, right?
Right, and we want to answer their questions. And in some of those, as I said, some of those, like there are some that it may make some sense, that they may have some convincing argument that would, that they could request to go to a different zone other than what staff recommended, but that we would bring forward to the city council, to the planning zoning and subsequently city council as part of the public hearing process.
So the bulk of these are either moving from residential multifamily to R1, which is 179, and then from multifamily residential to mixed residential. That handles the bulk of the problem. My question then would be is how do we do this in a way that doesn't, and don't take this wrong, so that the people don't feel like this is being shoved down their throat? You know, because when you get information from the city and you're busy and you don't even know what zone you're in, you don't know what your rights are and what you can and can't do, and all of a sudden the city's saying, well, we're going to change this. How do we give comfort to these property owners that what we are doing or what we are recommending, rather than just saying, we want to hear from you? You know, I mean, that seems like decisions are made by government, I'm not saying here, but, and the process is usually, well, we'll listen to you, and then the government does something different. And I want to avoid that. How do we take this complex issue and assure a bulk of these people, which is almost 500 people in those two zones, what do we say to them? How do we approach this and make them feel comfortable that, number one, their private property rights are not being affected, and it's a good thing for them? Because is the view going to be, well, you know, you just have to meet the law, so you got to do something, and it affects me, but I'm not sure how. How can we present this, or can we present it in a way that this will benefit, if it does, protecting the private property rights of each one of these owners? That's my big concern, is how we do that, if we can, because otherwise it's going to feel like it's going to be shoved down their throat.
So I think that was the goal really in the beginning in talking about the town hall, is get some information out so they know something's coming, they may not understand it, and give them an open forum to come and learn about what is transpiring. And then out of that, the ultimate goal is to get consents from as many as we can that say, we understand and we're good with it. So you start chipping away at them once you get consents. And then to really drill down on the ones that maybe don't understand, think maybe they should have a different zone, and work with them. But you have an obligation, we have an obligation to zone them somewhere, and there is going to be a public meeting, a public hearing with a recommendation at planning and zoning at some point. The goal is just to do a lot of front-end work with them before then, so that they don't feel like it's being shoved down their throats.
But it has to be.
We have no choice.
I know, so
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, they have to go somewhere.
How do you, you know, how is it that we're going to force the issue? It has to get done. But they have, what say do they have? And that's what concerns me is, I'll quote our current governor, Brad Little, and he said that Idahoans are a fierce, independent people, and they have a mistrust of government. And that's a hard thing, that's a hard barrier as we as elected representatives, we want to represent them. I want to represent them. And I want to think of what's in their best interest too, not just what the government says they're going to do.
Right.
And I'm looking for ideas and how we can do this in a way that works for the city and for our constituents.
Councilmember DePriest. Yeah, can I just add something here? I've had conversations with several people about this, and it's been on several occasions where we've had this discussion where mixed residential, and correct me if I'm wrong, allows single family, duplex and triplex. No triplex in mixed residential? Just duplex is max?
Yeah, you get single-family, residential, detached. You get duplexes, or you get twin or tri-townhomes.
Okay.
Single-family dwellings on lots, but they have a zero lot line construction.
A tri-home is not a triplex.
A tri-home is not a triplex.
Okay, I need to be sure.
And it also allows for cottage construction.
But I believe that the discussion I've had, when people hear that I've had the discussion with, that, oh, I'm single family in this zone, oh, I'm okay with that. They aren't forcing me to change or do anything.
Nope.
And that, you know, there's a lot of anxiety about it. And there was anxiety about the conversations I had with these people coming into these discussions. And it was almost universal. I think that once they understood that, hey, you know, I'm going to get to keep my single-family residential. There was, a lot of the anxiety seemed to drop, and it was, I hope, I believe and I hope that when we have the town hall, and the ability to have, I would assume similar discussions with the people, that if the people I talked to had that reaction, I would hope that at the town hall, when you have that reaction, it would have the same, have that discussion, it would have a similar reaction with the other people once they realize, oh, I basically get to keep what I've got.
So when Donna and I were talking about this earlier today and drilling down on some of the legal research you might need for tonight's discussion, one of the things that we stumbled on is we should have called mixed residential, mixed single-family residential. The title in and of itself, I think, might have provided some more clarity.
Change it? Can we change that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll make them, no, can't do it, no.
These are things that it seems to me a simple, right, assistance to it. A lot of it is when people hear things, and especially that they don't really understand or can't picture, you freak out. And the more visual the picture you can paint in the title, probably the less likely it is that people are going to freak out. So I think that's a great idea.
Councilmember White.
Yes. So, Fonda, last week you mentioned something about also keeping residential multifamily the way it is. That is another option, but I didn't see that option listed in any of the proposed brochures.
No, I think the question to me was, can we keep residential multifamily? And I said, if you as a council decide to reinstate residential multifamily, there will be a cascading effect of work that will need to be done. Part of which, and Donna can explain this better than I can, but part of which is, remember, your residential multifamily standards have been spread across other zones when you made a decision a couple years ago to remove that. So you have to be able to define what is going to be allowed in residential multifamily that you don't have elsewhere, and/or is this going to adjust your other zones? So there's a lot of detailed analysis that would go into reinstating a residential multifamily zone to include adding it back into your...
Besides changing its purpose.
Yeah, besides just changing its purpose.
Because if it truly is multifamily, then you wouldn't want residential and you wouldn't want duplexes.
Right.
If it truly is multifamily, you'd want triplexes or higher, if that's what you want in residential multifamily.
That was kind of the point that, I'm sorry.
Just a second. Go ahead.
So, but residential multifamily it does have single-family homes in it.
Today,
Yes.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that today, the purpose, if you were to reinstate it, your purpose of the residential multifamily zone says it's for multifamily, higher density uses. So you would be looking for a zone that would not be allowing for single family just by its purpose definition of it. It's at odds. The zone today is at odds for where we're at. It has a purpose that says we want multifamily. We want to have, triplexes and fourplexes and higher density by conditional use permit, whatever that is. But it allows for single family and duplexes. It's really, I don't know. Thank you.
It's a hybrid.
That's a something.
But also mixed residential is also like that.
It is not. It's all single family.
Mixed residential.
It is mixed design types, detached and attached housing
It is not multifamily.
at all.
What you think about that?
Okay, let me think.
Councilmember
And this is just discussion, there's no decision.
Right, no, there isn't.
And in addition to these discussions, and you just touched on it, and we've had these discussions, multifamily facilitates whatever, higher density than mixed residential. And when, in these discussions, with these people, when they hear that, those who don't want more density, say, oh, I'd rather have mixed residential. I don't want, if residential multifamily is going to allow more density, then I don't want that. And understanding that mixed residential, single family, duplex, three home, townhome.
Twin and tri-home.
Tri-home, okay, and that's max, correct? Yeah.
There is no conditional use
Yeah,
permit.
you can
to
almost
allow
see them
for
go,
that.
oh, hey. So,
I think we just answered Council President Roeder's earlier question, though, because I think we just refer everybody back to this recording and this discussion to listen before they come to the town
what
hall.
time are we in? The 2-hour mark of the whatever meeting?
I have a question for Councilmember White. Your zoning currently is what for your house?
Residential multifamily.
Ideally, what would you like? If you could pick anything, what would you be?
That's not the point. The point is that we're throwing over 500 homeowners into, or parcel owners into making a decision on things that they really are not informed about. And for me, the main idea is to not, is the whole comprehensive plan at first through 1,700 parcels into turmoil. And that's what got this ball rolling. And in taking out the residential multifamily zone and just removing it, it took us into having to take an action. And I just feel like it's so many unknowns for so many people all at once. That's why I keep going back to keeping the residential multifamily, because it has a large lot size for a single-family home, plus it has duplexes and triplexes. You've got your minimum lot size on residential multifamily is larger than a lot size on multifamily for a single home.
So I remember your statement that you're concerned that you are in residential multifamily, that somebody could buy houses next to you and then put up higher density, and you didn't like that. I mean, ideally, if you could be, that would be a question. Yeah, hang on one second here. Do we know if her property could be zoned R1? Would you rather have R1 around you where you're protected to have just one house on your lot and your neighbor's lot and around you? Or do you want to maintain where you're concerned? I remember you saying, I don't want other people to come by and buy these houses and they could put up whatever density that would allow that.
Right. Well, let me refresh your memory. When the letters were first sent out over a year ago, the first zoning that my property was given was mixed use. And that is apartments. That was where my concern came from.
Right.
And I was concerned about all the neighboring properties that got the mixed use. Then after that, we got the mixed residential zoning assigned to us. Okay? Then we requested, because we were in this process, we did request R1, single-family residential. But at that point in time, this whole 1,700 properties getting rezoned was put on hold because residential multifamily was put back in for a one-year interim. Mixed use and mixed residential was adopted as a code. Is that correct?
Mixed use and mixed residential were adopted in April of 2021. So they were adopted prior to the letters that went out that you're referring to.
What happened in September?
That's when the residential multifamily was put in as an interim ordinance back in, so that you own design standards. So should you want to do something on your property, you could do it based on design standards.
Mixed use and mixed residential also had something done to it in September.
Not that I remember, but.
It was in the minutes in September.
So-
I didn't bring that with me. I didn't know we were going to.
So with that, say under the water under the bridge and we're trying to move forward,
Right.
would you, and I'm still going to ask that question, would you prefer to be in R1?
I'm concerned with the overall comprehensive plan.
I think there are concerns, but we're looking at you, because there's a bunch of people that could be, 179 people that could be in an R1, and I would think, and I'll speak out, I don't own property in residential multifamily, but if I could be an R1 and be a single, one home and my neighbors, I'd love that. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. And my home fits in the description of residential, of single-family residential. The street that I live on fits in that. I'm just looking at the overall principle of so many homes being put into a turmoil right now, and that the whole comprehensive plan is being brought together in this decision.
Right, and I'm not trying to pick on you, because I want to get into your thinking, because you're an example here that could be what the thinking of 179 people are. You're in this zone that would allow a higher density, but you could be put in a zone that would protect your property rights by only allowing one house on your property and your neighbors. And do you think that's a good thing or not?
It's a good thing, but I'm looking at the overall
Let's
principle.
take this piece by piece.
If I might interrupt.
Yes, sir.
just a moment. Council President Roeder, I think that although, yes, Councilmember White's property would be better, that would be perhaps an ideal situation for her personally. Her concern is not for her personally. Her concern is that her concern is for the other 525 property owners here and everyone getting this letter and the confusion that it's going to cause. Is that?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, sir.
And so I'm trying to deal with that with understanding you're thinking with 179. And kind of, if that would feel good or that looks good, then let's look at the 346 and kind of take a look at how we can do that. Because I think this is an easy sell, meaning that we could tell people, this is what's going to do for you. How many times does the government say, hey, we got a good suggestion, what do you think of that? And I think that's a winner there.
Councilmember DePriest.
Yeah, can I ask a question here? The interim ordinance in these two, the mixed residential and residential multifamily, we're talking about the current zone map, not the future land use map. Is that correct?
Correct.
Direction of the council was to migrate these properties to the existing zone map, not future
Right, we're
land
not
use map.
talking about the future land use map and the comprehensive plans as it pertains to the future land use map. We're talking about what is on the current zone map and whether we're going to mixed use or mixed residential, should change those so it's easier, and residential multifamily.
So as an example, duplexes were allowed uses by conditional use permit in the residential R1 zone previously. And so those areas that have duplexes on them in the residential multifamily zone today would migrate toward mixed residential because that is the only zone under the current zoning, minus
It
the
has nothing
residential
to do with the
multifamily,
comprehensive
that
plan of
would
future
allow
land use, right?
for duplexes.
We're not talking about the comprehensive plan of future land use. Right.
You're not.
Question on the breakdown of the numbers by the going to new designated zoning. Do any of these numbers create spot zoning? Based on these numbers?
They do not.
So in other words, the staff has looked through this and said, look, we can do this, it meets Idaho code, and these are what we think, plus or minus, this is pretty much
Plus or minus.
what would work. And see, this gives me a tool to think about this because I was confused, not surprising. Because we're looking at the majority of what to do with two zones and how that's presented to the public and what their thinking would be in accepting this. That's what I'm concerned about. I think that's what you're concerned about is how are the people going to react to this city-initiated zone changes en masse, but we're looking at, two main zone changes. And we have to think about those two And that's all we're doing tonight is discussion and thinking.
Ladies, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to, the point isn't what my zone is going to be or what my home is going to happen to my home. I'm thinking about the 500 plus parcels here. And I'm also seeing that a lot of the people in the city of Hayden are not convinced that the comprehensive plan is the way to go. The 2040 comprehensive plan, and it's mixed use and it's mixed residential, is not 100% embraced upon. And in what we're talking about with these numbers, we've got 346 going into mixed residential. We've got 14 going into mixed use. And so I see it as putting the cart before the horse when we should be talking about the plan. And that's why I'm wondering, can't we just put residential multifamily back in and then talk about the comprehensive plan?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure that we can come to a consensus on anything here tonight. I certainly appreciate everyone's points of views.
Yeah.
I might suggest with council's agreement that next council meeting, this needs to come up as an action item, and we should decide as a council whether to revisit the plan, and if not, to proceed with a direction on getting this out to the public.
Let's be really clear, your comprehensive plan is a wholly separate issue from your current zoning code. We're talking about current zoning code and current zone map, not comprehensive plan.
I understand,
Okay.
although Councilmember White has brought up a point that she would like to see this issue revisited in the plan, and I'd like to give that an opportunity for a viewing in front of council anyway. Mr. Boyer.
Oh, I was just looking at the calendar.
Okay, tell us.
The next meeting, if you were to look at this and decide, so because the direction we had was to put together the letter. Yeah, go ahead.
This sounds, and workshops are open to the public, this sounds like if we're going to, it's going to take a long time to deal with this issue of revisiting the comprehensive plan, because that is, you do then get into an extremely detailed cost issues and everything else, that it's going to take a long time. So I would ask that we maybe have a workshop situation on if we're going to revisit looking at the comprehensive plan, then, I mean, look at the amount of time we spend on it just alone right now. It's going to be a lengthy issue.
May I?
Councilmember White.
Along with that idea of a workshop, though, is we need to resolve the point brought up last meeting about what council members can be present in a workshop or not.
So you can all be present at a workshop. You can't have a quorum at a town hall meeting
Okay,
on
but
an issue that's coming before you in a public hearing fashion. So I think, unless I misunderstood what Councilman Tracy is talking about with regards to a
A
workshop.
workshop like we had earlier today.
Okay.
Budget
You would
workshop.
all, yeah, you would all come.
You would
to
all
that.
be there.
A workshop.
okay. Yeah, because when you had mentioned, Fonda, when you mentioned last meeting that we could not be present in the
Town hall
halls,
meeting.
you did not mention quorum. So.
Well,
I
you should not be
misunderstood.
present at all. That is correct. Because those are issues that are coming to you. When we have the town hall to educate the public on this issue, if in fact that ends up happening based on tonight's conversation, the public is going to ask questions.
The property
I'm
owners.
sorry, property owners, you're right. The property owners are going to ask questions of Donna, of myself, of Brett, and that is going to be information that you should not hear in light of the fact you're going to have to make a decision after a public hearing on assigning these properties to a zone. So that would just be extraneous information outside of the public hearing process that you just to protect the process, should not have. So that was the reason. But you are a parcel owner, so we offered you an individual meeting.
Right. But I've been in these other meetings before where there have been city council members present. So even in town halls or whatever.
Sure, there are town
workshops
halls that
and
are not,
workshops.
does not dealing with information that is specifically going to public hearing. There's lots of informational town hall meetings that absolutely you guys would be able to be at. This is different because this is it's a very narrow topic, it's very specific information, and it is 100% information that's coming to you in a public hearing.
Would you be able to provide for a statute on that issue, on why we couldn't be present?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Because I feel uncomfortable not being able to help constituents or be with them during these processes, personally. So I would like to know. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah. I think, again, we have till September 28th to resolve this issue of the interim ordinance, and say, okay, we're gonna circle back right now and deal with the comprehensive plan and put this aside until we do. I don't think we're gonna resolve the revision of the comprehensive plan in a one meeting type of thing. Doesn't it have to go to public hearing to actually do that also? So you take that time into effect. We have September 28th deadline to deal with this interim ordinance, or it reverts to, and that's it.
It doesn't revert, it expires.
Expires, and then it is what it was.
No, it's reverting to nothing. You're going to have 553 parcels with no zone designation, of which you are obligated to give them.
Right, so there is an urgency to get this done, and I'm all for the workshop and looking into the revisiting, but we better get this done by the 28th, or it's going to be
Code.
what it is.
Yeah. Right.
So what about, just thinking out of the box here, I think that any zone map amendment anywhere has people that either really like the idea or they really don't like the idea. Of the 500 and whatever the heck we have of residential multifamily lots, there are a substantial number of them that are what they are. I mean, they're in PUDs, so they're going to be, whatever the PUD trumps, kind of the design of the PUD trumps that. Duplexes are duplexes. A good chunk of these parcels are all already taken care of. So why don't we just mail the trifolds and the flyers, shoot for a July 9th date instead of the 25th, because I really want them to have this information a good solid 2 weeks before they are coming to a town hall. A solid 2 weeks. And just see what the response is. And then if we get our head handed to us on a platter, which is possible, we'll have direction from the public that we're trying desperately to protect that may or may not be as opposed to this as council may think. Now, understanding that I am the one that's going to get most of those phone calls, so that's me that's going to get to deal with that, so I get that. But we won't be doing anything. Again, this is kind of staff's attempt to see this kind of forward and then bring it back to council once we have, maybe we'll get consents from folks, maybe we won't, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. And then we'll have a much better idea of what it is that those members of the residential multifamily currently zoned properties feel.
Are we going to ask for a written feedback from all of the people that are going to receive this letter so we can see whether 50% think this is a dumb idea and we don't want anything to do with it?
I think it's a great plan.
Huh?
I think it's a great plan.
To request
feedback from all of them, yeah.
But I
Whether,
mean,
we may not get it all.
I'm talking about a
Right.
written one.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they could check the box, or they can write the
We may find
comment,
out
or...
that 3% say I don't like it, and 97 go, and I
Say, fine with it.
yeah.
And you may not get responses at all, because, you know,
Right.
that is the world we live in. It is, I mean...
So Councilwoman White, I'd like to read something to you in response to your question and make it part of the record. And it's in relationship to bias and ex parte communications in quasi-judicial proceedings. Where parties are appearing in quasi-judicial settings such as special use applications, rezones, or variance proceedings, they are entitled to unbiased decision makers. The right to be protected from biased decision makers is rooted squarely in the state and federal constitutions and applies to local agencies. This requirement applies not only to courts, but also to state administrative agencies, members of planning commissions, and city councils. They are expected to approach each case without bias or recuse themselves if they cannot. In any event, the impartial adjudicator requirement is imperative in quasi-judicial zoning decisions in Idaho. With appellate review in our state very limited, it is imperative that biased or potentially biased commissioners and council members be barred from participating in a zoning procedure. And there's case law. It's Manukian versus Blaine County, 112 Idaho 697. Thus, Idaho law flatly forbids biased decision makers from participating in zoning applications where they have or could display a bias. My advice to the city council members to not be present at the town hall is to protect you so that we can follow the requirements of the unbiased decision-making process in this state.
Okay, Donna suggested that we send these flyers out, and if I might paraphrase this, see what reaction we get. Councilmember White, what's your feeling on that?
I'm still not comfortable with it.
Okay. Councilmember DePriest?
I think, especially with the time frame we're looking at, that the sooner we can get information out to those particular parcel owners and that they have to give input, the last thing we want to be doing is scrambling at the very end. And then that's what I feel happening here, you know, this and that and this and that. And we're going to get down to September 14th and have to do something. So I think the sooner to get those property owners who are going to be involved, because I kind of agree, like I said, with the conversations I've had, and I don't know what the response to the city has been, if they're getting phone calls and constant people saying, hey, 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 or if there really is much, you know, like Councilmember Roeder said, 3% might have an issue with it, where the other 97 are going, eh. And that may be the response that we end up getting when we send these out. So I think we should initiate the process as soon as possible.
Council President Roeder.
I understand the concern by Councilmember White about some things on the comprehensive plan because of the future land use map, and also that the comp plan, the 2040 comp plan really is looking at how to densify Hayden, how to put more homes and less. I mean, that's part of the smart growth model, which I'm not supportive of. Working on a comp plan is not going to be an easy or short-term project. I don't see that we could do that and meet the time deadline to zone, which we're obligated by law to have these zone designation by September whatever. I don't see where we can handle that. I think we have two separate issues here. The most immediate one that we need to take care of is putting zone definitions to these parcels. So I do support the letters going out. Now, we're talking about what's in our packet, correct?
Yeah, but I'd propose to change the date from June 25th to July 9th.
Okay, and then also our legal counsel made a suggestion about changing the name of one of the zones. Do we have time to do that?
That has to go to planning and zoning, and
So no.
I don't think we have time.
Okay.
But we can still refer to it that way, just because it's not the legal title in your code. We can help people understand better by referring to it that way.
Right, I'm just concerned about the public and what they.
Can we tell them there's a potential name change?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we refer to it, say, and it's potentially going to be changed too.
Yes.
to better describe the zone.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm in favor of that because we have to do something. And the comp plan, if the council decides it wants to work on, be the next project, but we have to take what's the most urgent and deal with it. And I see this as the most urgent.
Mr. Mayor,
Council,
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
I have one more
Go ahead.
comment. I just want to remind the council that it was in April of last year that the residential multifamily code was removed. It didn't just go away, it was removed. And we were left with over 500 parcel owners in residential multifamily with no zone for almost 5 months. And that's why this was reinstated for the year. So in seeing the urgency of putting those homes in a zone is true, they need to be zoned, but I don't believe that putting them into the comp plan zones is the answer. Okay? That's
Council.
what I would like to say.
In this section that we are in right now, we are having a roundtable discussion. We have disagreement amongst council as to how to proceed. Can you provide us with some direction that we should formally or informally pursue?
So first of all, there was unanimous approval by council to send the flyers out at the last meeting. So we need-
Actually, it was consensus. There was
Oh, it was
no
not unanimous,
vote
you are
taken.
correct. There was consensus, but it was approved to have the flyers sent out.
Yes.
So retracting that decision has not been put on any agenda for an action item, first of all.
True.
Second to that,
Any other council member I'd be happy to have someone jump in here, but yeah, yes, I believe that's the case.
so second to that, you can't take action, as you know, in your roundtable.
Correct.
You can come back to, after seeing the minutes or some notes from tonight's meeting, and give some direction to staff for an agenda item for the next meeting.
Would that agenda item be send,
Well, you can, your previous decision still stands. It's not been retracted, so.
I think we have to let the previous decision stand.
Before I comment on that,
Sorry.
Mayor, I'd like to ask Sandy, Councilmember White, what would you suggest we do? How do we handle this problem?
I suggest we reinstate or redo the residential multifamily and put it back in temporarily, or put it back in and work on the comp plan amendments.
But that would take 179 houses that could be put into single-family residence and protect that versus where properties could be torn down and put in higher density. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Well, Council President Roeder, I suggest at this point that we're kind of rehashing, I understand your point, but it seems to me that we're starting to rehash things here. Based on the consensus that we had last council meeting, I have to say, we need to proceed with those. With the consensus we had last time, we need to proceed with mailing out those flyers. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would like to say I did ask in an email that this become, yesterday I asked that it would be an agenda item tonight that we could vote on. I just want that for the record, that I did request that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think it needs to be said that, to add an agenda item, you have to have a good faith reason to add it to the agenda. We can't just add it.
I asked actually on Friday. I believe I asked on Friday. No, wait,
It was Monday morning.
it was Monday morning,
Monday
okay.
morning, yeah.
It was after the agenda had been.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
No. Sorry. On a different subject here, I'd like to use this time to kind of bring forth and to the public.
Councilmember Priest. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think he's getting to go any other different topics from that, because I think it was my reporting area, and I'm done, I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
I think that's enough time.
Everybody, okay, are we now in council comments?
Council comments,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, I like to kind of use this time to bring up points that people from the public have contacted me about, their concerns, things they might like to have discussed or whatever. And a couple issues, one of them related to the detour. I had a constituent ask if there was a possibility of a temporary four-way stop at the corner of Hayden and Maple, as it apparently, I'm guessing it's Maple, trying to get across Hayden at certain times of the day, I guess is becoming a nightmare, especially for the people on Maple, my guess is. And there was a request, can you please, my guess it'll back Maple up onto Government Way, so there may be no real answer to it, but I just want to bring that forth because they asked me to. And they also asked for future consideration and it's going to be quite a while down, but there could be consideration of maybe an amphitheater being developed out here when the road, and people move over to the lakes, so we're talking down the road. But if that makes it, some type of an amphitheater into the park now.
Which park are you talking about?
Well, the park right next door, when the road department moves to lakes.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and so we're years out, but that was just for consideration down the road.
And before you get off of the intersection, I think it would be a good time to have Alan, maybe address it and give an update on the intersection construction, where we're at. That'd be good.
Is that, sure. Update on the intersection construction. It is still being scheduled to be paved before 4th of July. The intent is to have the intersection open for that holiday weekend. However, due to some other delays, it will probably close for another 5 days after that, and then it'll be completely open. So that's the current schedule. It hasn't been ratified on paper yet, but that's where we're going to end up going.
Is that the concrete issue primarily?
That and we've had some, and we had that, some conflicts and stuff, again, more conflicts that were not perceived. As far as the intersection, I've been through the intersection. I've sat on Maple for a substantial period of time, and I understand that the delays there. We did add additional signage, which did seem to help a little bit. We are really, today's the 14th. We were really only about 10 days, plus or minus, before this is opened up.
Yeah.
My gut feeling is, without doing a study, because the only way I can tell you whether that would be more of a nightmare or less of a nightmare, be to study what the impacts are, because you're going to add huge delays on Hayden Avenue and to eliminate delays on Maple. So somebody's
Government Way.
somebody's going to pay the piper. Without doing a study that would either say, yeah, that would work or not work, my gut feeling is, because of the huge amount of traffic on Hayden that's being brought through, that putting that stop on Hayden for every car to stop, that delay would be huge and would create a bigger traffic issue than what we've got right now. And I'm not saying we don't have a traffic issue. That's not my point, but I think that it could be worse.
Just gut it out until we get to
And
it.
so, like I said, I don't think I could get a study done in 10 days that would have a benefit. So I think that at this point, I would just like to ask the public to try to be patient, and we will get there. I think it's the best thing I can provide, Councilman.
Thank you. Deputy Cox was there at Honeysuckle Beach a couple weeks ago now with Mr. Chapman, who monitors the beach, or I don't know what his official title is with regard to activity down there at the launch, and he brought up several issues regarding behavior and traffic patterns and conflicts that occur related to that. So I think maybe either with staff and maybe bring Mr. Chapman in, who knows, but find a solution to some valid issues he has down there to hopefully make that area run more smoothly. And along with Honeysuckle Beach and the issue that was brought up earlier by Mr. Reich, I'm sorry. Okay, I have here in my notes, that's, if and at all, that is going to be a very long process. And that we need to, I believe we need to, in some form, initiate one direction or the other of what we're going to do, and not just keep, putting it off and putting it off, that at some point we have to initiate a discussion. What do we want to, what direction do we want to go with that? The ACI borders, I brought this up a couple times. Is there any potential of the powers that be getting involved with making some more definitive ACI borders related to, what is currently the shared tier and things like that?
I can check with Dave Callahan. I haven't heard anything from him on it, so.
Thank you. And with that, I'm done.
I have a couple of announcements. First of all, to remind everyone that we have the Dog Days of Summerfest this Saturday at Stoddard Park. And also that we are having a joint council HERA meeting on July 11th at 3 p.m., just to put in everyone's calendars. Does anyone else have any announcement that they'd like to make?
I would like to comment that tonight is Zach's last city council meeting with the city of Hayden, and he is here tonight, so you guys could wish him well in the future after the meeting. Anyway.
Zach, I have told you this in private. I'll tell you this now in public, how much we are going to hate to see you go.
Second.
We appreciate your demeanor, your professionalism, your succinct way of stating facts, and your analysis of a situation and being able to put it into simple terms that people like me can understand. We will miss you beyond words, and we wish you so many good things in the future. Thank you.
Speech.
All I wanted to do, Zach Trevino for the record, is thank the council for all that you do, and the public as well for the engagement that you bring to these meetings. It's very important, and what I can say that I have learned is, regardless of perspective on an issue, being able to talk about it and being able to work forward step by step with the common goal of preserving what's great about Hayden and trying to fix our problems as they arise. If that can continue, then I have confidence that Hayden will continue to be a wonderful place to live, to visit, and could be an example in North Idaho. And so I definitely have learned a lot. I appreciate the opportunity, and I also am sorry to go. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no more announcements, do I hear a move for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. Done.
Done.